Trump is MAGA, America first, isolationist. Maybe Trump will be less hawkish than Harris.
It is incontrovertible fact that Palestine and Gaza were among the most important factors in this election.
And enough people will go third party that will deny the margin of victory that the Democrats need to win that election.
Very nice words, but happens to be wrong.
Esa. Okay. Esa? Yes. Esa Galloway.
Esa Galloway.
What is up, y'all? Welcome to the show. My name, of course, as that introduction made very clear, is Esa Galloway. I'll be your host today. We have a doozy of a topic to get into, and it is the American Muslim vote. I mean, it's almost been a week since the election. I think enough time has gone by that we can talk about this without getting crazy, right? Without, hating on each other too much. The reason I say that is because there's some really interesting things that have been going on with my own personal life. But also, I think all of you are experiencing it when it comes to social media. Here's just one example of how folks have gotten way out of control with their feelings being hurt on the election. But I want to talk a little bit more about how this affected me personally. Um, I have a family member, an aunt, on my father's side of the family, basically disowned me. And why? Because I dared vote for, Dr. Jillstein in Colorado, a state 100% sure and did go for Kamala Harris. So my protest vote, absolutely had no threat to the outcome of the election because the way the Electoral College works. I even explained this all to my aunt, and she still thought, because she lived through Nam and she's a white lady, that she just knows better than me, my community, all of anyone who might have been frustrated with the DNC, and just basically demanded 100% fealty to the Democrats. And man, I got to tell you, it was eye-opening. The other thing, though, is why do people care about the American Muslim vote? It's interesting because before the election, so many articles from the mainstream press, from leftist streamers and channels and alternative media to right-wing streamers and channels to alternative media, everyone's talking about how American Muslims are going to vote. And that's because depending on who you ask and who you listen to, we might have the credit for, or some would say the blame for, Kamala Harris losing. I think that's a bit preposterous, but we're going to get into a few things about this election. I want to start, though, with, and I hope you'll forgive me, a little bit of indulgence on your part. They say hindsight is 20/20. I want to talk about foresight. And no, this is not, well, I guess maybe it is, and I told you so moment. But I started a project called Vote Blue, Except You Know Who. And I wanted to show you some coverage that this project got just before the election, because it kind of was the impetus for me starting this channel. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
It has been more than a year since Hamas launched an attack on Israel, killing more than 1,200 people and more than 200 were taken as hostages. More than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed since this war began. In the United States, it has become a major talking point in the upcoming election. With 9 days to go until Election Day, some voters say they're using their vote as a protest over the war, saying they'll vote third party. Esa Galloway says that is why he started a campaign called Vote Blue Except You Know Who. He says he doesn't want to vote for either Vice President Kamala Harris or former President Donald Trump.
Thinking is vote third party at the POTUS level and then vote for Democrats down ballot to try to give a potential Trump presidency as much opposition as possible.
One political science professor at Metro State University says the protest vote could hurt the Gaza cause in the long run. In a recent town hall, Harris said that she hopes voters will support her despite her stance on Gaza and says she is working to end the war. Trump previously made comments about the war, saying Israel should end it quickly. This weekend, he brought several local Muslim leaders in Michigan on stage with him at a rally as he works to shore up support.
See what they did there? Guys, there is so much to say about this clip, but I want to start with something positive. And one of the things we're going to do on this channel is we're going to break down media. We're going to do media criticism and make sure that some of the messaging just doesn't, get unnoticed as we look at how people try to make us think, try to influence us. First and foremost, I want to start with the positive. almost never do you see mainstream media, whether it's local, whether it's national, really cover just how diverse, popular, and um, wide spanning the anti-genocide movement is. And I gotta love this clip right here where they showed the crowd had young people, old people, people from all backgrounds and races, and then they zoomed in on this poster from one of the protesters, because my heart goes out to the Jewish community that's been marching. They've totally internalized never again for anyone. And right now, as someone who grew up in Germany, West Germany, during the Cold War on an army base, I've literally stuck my heads into the ovens, walked through the gas chambers or showers where they just massacred people in the Holocaust. And to me, it's so important that people realize that the voices who are against the genocide are not a monolith, that they're incredibly diverse, that they include Jewish people. And I could go on and on about this all day, but a couple other things about that clip that really kind of upset me. First and foremost, I encourage everyone to go check out voteblueexceptyouKnowWho.com. It's the website that built this up. And the one thing that kind of disappointed me about this, and I highlighted the text here for you, my own sister, when she saw the news piece, called me and she was like, I was about to tear your head off. I was going to chew you out until I went to the web version of the broadcast and saw stuff that wasn't included in the video. And she was specifically talking about my statement where I said I couldn't stand before God on the day of judgment, not having done everything I could to oppose genocide. That little bit of moral call out, actually made my own family members respect my position a little more. And I think that was missing from most of the coverage of protest votes and the Muslim vote in general. Another thing that is really interesting was they sent a cameraman and obviously interviewed the political science professor. Uh, Unfortunately, they didn't let him speak. They just showed some B-roll and then spoke for him. The part that they spoke for him, I'm a little questionable about. He mentions that he thinks a protest vote could backfire for helping the people of Gaza. I'd love to dig into that a little bit. Maybe in a future episode we can reach out to him and see if he would want to be on the show. But more importantly, this thing that's highlighted here is, and I think he's spot on. He says that, and this is kind of a sad reflection on society, but he literally said that the genocide in Gaza, I don't know if he used that language, probably more something like the conflict in the Middle East, is not top of mind of most voters. And he's 100% right for that. And this is, I'm going to build on in the next edition of this series, why I don't think you can give the credit or the blame for the election results to the American Muslim community. Another thing that I want to get into is this idea of pro-Trump Muslims. Um, Before the election, I saw a few one-off imams that I knew, people in different activist circles and online chat groups that I'm a part of. Every now and then there would be that one voice who was brave enough to say they were voting for Trump. And quite honestly, everyone was like, what the, what? I just don't get it. And they would make their case. And a lot of times it just sounded like, regurgitation of right wing Tucker Carlson style talking points, or just sort of, quite frankly, naivete, taking current words over past actions. Um, but then I actually started to dig a little bit and I spoke to people and I wanted to kind of break down why would folks want to vote for Trump? And I want to get into this uh, basically with a little more nuance. So, the reason why that I discovered by talking to folks is that level one is kind of how to respond to the genocide with doing no harm. And the way they would look at that is, and I'm not saying any one of these is the major point for people who might vote for Harris, but take it with a grain of sand. It could be an either or kind of an all of the above situation. First and foremost, most people did believe, and I hope we're all going to be proven wrong because I'm in this camp, that a Trump presidency is going to be even worse for the people of Gaza and for peace in the Middle East. Um, I'm highly, highly skeptical, and I would love to have to eat crow and be wrong on that. Um, but the other part of this is people would make excuses for Kamala. They would say things like she's the VP, so she's not, traditionally empowered, especially on foreign policy. And there's very few exceptions where vice presidents were incredibly empowered in an administration. So there's a logic there. So people would say, in order to prevent harm, and then with the hope that somehow Kamala would do better, that they would vote for her in order for helping the people of Gaza. The other level is the level I chose, which is a protest vote. And I did a little bit more nuance, I thought, than most protest voters. When you get to protest voters, a lot of times, or third party voters in general, a lot of times they end up being what's called an accelerationist. So essentially, what this theory is that because things are slowly getting worse and worse and worse, and there's always this choice of the lesser of two evils, you're just assured to have an evil outcome because you're always choosing, one evil or the other, kind of picking your poison. So these people decided we're going to protest vote. We're not participating in the system anymore. And there's a lot of, I think, validity to that stance. The big criticism there is that by doing that, you're empowering a Trump presidency. And that kind of leads me to that third bucket. So you have the first bucket, I'm trying to do no harm. The second bucket is essentially I'm speaking out against it with my voice. And then if you took like my vote blue, except you know who, then the sophistication comes that down ballot, you split your ticket or that you would do vote swapping so that you could, number one, not harm a Harris administration as much, basically working against a Trump administration. And then number two, and here's the real important part of that, is you would want to make a potential, Trump administration a lame duck by going as hard as you can to make sure that the U.S. House and U.S. Senate would be opposition controlled, meaning Democrat controlled, so that it would be a check and a balance on the presidency. Unfortunately, right now we're looking at a Republican trifecta. And they're still counting a few votes in the House, but it's almost 100% sure that Republicans will have majorities on all three. Now, the reason I'm going here is that if you have family, if you're directly from the region, not like me where I'm a convert to Islam, my affinity is just seeing innocent women and children being slaughtered in mass, and then it gets amplified even more by those people sharing my faith. And then, of course, my faith teaches justice. So these are all reasons that for me, the Gaza vote and the expanding war in the Holy Land was such a crucial topic this election. But for people who were even more outraged, either it touched them personally through their family members or, had a perspective like mine, maybe a little deeper through their cultural and ethnic identities, they want to punish the Harris campaign. They want to punish Biden Harris because that's the administration that, let's face it, actually oversaw and red light and continued to support and continued to veto everything in the UN to allow for the genocide to go for more than a year now. So that's the logic behind voting for Trump. Of course, you're going to have some Muslims who are in the MAGA crowd. Just like I said earlier, there's going to be people who are panning this political spectrum. But I don't think that's the majority. I think just like a lot of Obama voters who ended up voting for Trump, were basically giving a middle finger to the establishment Democrats. I think a lot of Muslims who voted for Trump were doing it purely out of anger for what was going on in the Middle East. Now, I want to get back into the video to explore these topics a little bit more. So let's get into it.
Dearborn-based Imam Bilal al-Zuhairi met Trump backstage with 20 other religious leaders from across the country to build support for Arab and Muslim Americans.
We believe that our religion is a religion of peace, and we don't want to see no more wars.
When he was president, he put a Muslim ban. He supports Israel. So how do you tackle that?
I don't want to talk about the past. Now that he is trying to extend his hand to us, and the fact that he's meeting us, he's listening to us attentively, I think that this is a good gesture.
If elected as president, doesn't keep up with his promises, do you have access to him and his team to express your grievances?
I would like to assume the best, not the worst.
So obviously, this video was highly edited, and it makes the Imam look a little naive. And in all honesty, I kind of feel like he is. There's going to be some more coverage of him coming up. But I also want to say, one of the people we're going to explore some clips from is Imam Tom from the Yaqeen Institute, and he predicted the Trump win well before the election. So kudos to him. And now that this is a Republican trifecta with Trump at the head, this Imam might be one of the VIPs for our community if we're facing issues and if he can get that access he was talking about.
If you're a Muslim American, and you're upset about what's happening in the Middle East, why would you put your faith in somebody who passed a Muslim ban and repeatedly suggested that somehow you weren't part of our American community.
Now, honestly, I got to tell Barry to slow his roll. Um, the thing is, we're at a point in the video where we're kind of talking about pro-Trump Muslims, but we're also getting into the frustration we all have with Democrats. I mean, one thing I'm incredibly proud of, the American Muslim community said, look, we are not going to be a community, a voting demographic that you guys can just take for granted. We're not going to keep taking it. We've seen other communities that the Democrats rely on for decades, giving nothing to them other than lip service and empty promises. And then because of the lesser of two evils, just who are they going to vote for? Who are they going to turn to? We said, you know what? No, we're not doing that. Now, there's a lot of complications, and I need you guys to stay with me till the end of the video, because I think if we do this wrong, and it looks like we're on the track to doing this wrong, we're going to miss not only a historic opportunity, but we'll set ourselves back for decades. And I just really don't want to see that happen. I want to build a coalition of good people, people who put actual Americans first, not this slogan, America first, but people who care about our nation and are doing what's best for our nation. That doesn't mean being an isolationist. That means being responsible and living up to what America says its values are. Now, the thing about this is Democrats did almost everything possible to push Muslims towards Trump or to suppress the vote. And I'm going to prove that to you with a lot of outreach that they do. But I also want to get into a couple of the ideas circulating in the conversation within our community before the vote happened. So I have a couple more clips featuring spiritual leaders, featuring American Muslim pundits, and featuring some motivational speakers that we are about to get into.
Then you got Donald Trump going into Michigan 3-4 times, but he had, I guess you could say, the gall to go there after all what he said about Muslims. I'm telling you, the guy relies upon the short-term memory of people and the gullibility of some community leaders. And he goes in there, and one guy says, I don't know if you saw this clip, what do you have to say to the Muslim community? We love you, right? What are you going to do about this war? We're going to end it, right? We want peace. Why didn't the Democrats do this?
Question.
What you see now takes priority over what may happen in the future. When I'm making any decision, what's happening now is a certainty. You are aiding and abetting killing. In the future, what may happen in the future is also highly likely. No doubt about that. Highly likely. But we just don't know it.
Yeah, now this is absolutely true, and I think a great rule of thumb to live your life by. I think it kind of falls apart, though, when you're talking about what a future President Trump administration will be like, especially when it comes to the Holy Land.
You said earlier that I'm engaging in speculation. You just said kind of alim al-ghaib, an unseen world. It's not speculation. This is a man who, when he was president, gave Israel whatever it wanted. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He legalized the illegal annexation of the Golan Heights. Since the genocide began in Gaza, he said he would let Israel, quote, finish the job. He's told Netanyahu, quote, do what you have to do. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has said that Israel should expel Palestinians into the desert. So I do believe it is madness to say that Donald Trump promises peace when he doesn't promise peace.
If we're going to be honest, and people really hate this line, the best predictor for future behavior is past behavior.
Yeah, and that's huge. And we're about to get into some past behavior. So I'm not going to talk too much. Let's just get straight into it.
There is one president in our lifetime, just one. That president is Donald Trump.
Okay. So in case you don't know who this is Miriam Adelson. She is the widow of Sheldon Adelson. And Sheldon Adelson was a casino magnate, a guy that just made billions of dollars off of gambling. He became one of the biggest Republican donors, kind of far-right donors, definitely pro-Israel. It was his focus. And in fact, in the first Trump campaign, he secured promises for Trump to move the embassy and recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And I know it's been a long time since that happened, but at the time it was seen incredibly provocative. So I want to get back into this clip because you're going to hear directly from her about what's coming up and about past behavior.
He promised to recognize Jerusalem and to move the embassy to Jerusalem. Promise kept. He promised to withdraw from Iran nuclear deal, and promise kept. He promised to bring peace between Israel and Arab nations. Promise kept. And all in Golan Heights, that was a big gift. He promised Golan Heights, and he recognized.
Okay. So we got to get back into this clip because she is now among the top donors, was now among the top donors of President Trump's campaign, probably just behind Elon Musk. And what is going on here is she's reportedly, and this is a Jewish newspaper from Israel, Israeli newspaper, not a Jewish newspaper, excuse me, where it's reporting that she wants to annex the West Bank. And we've seen how the war has expanded into Lebanon. I don't think that we can look at this with any kind of doubt. I think this is incredibly important to keep in mind. Now, again, past behavior and the people who are praising President Trump, all of this was done before the election. Let's get into one more example.
I want to thank President Trump for his leadership in brokering the historic Abraham Accords. Those accords saw peace forged between Israel and 4 Arab countries, and they were supported by Republicans and Democrats alike.
You hear that? Republicans and Democrats alike.
I also want to thank President Trump for all the things he did for Israel, from recognizing Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, to confronting Iran's aggression, to recognizing Jerusalem as our capital and moving the American embassy there.
Okay. I hope you can see why people in the Muslim community are becoming more and more frustrated with Democrats. I think this idea of seeing pro-Trump Muslims is a direct result of anger at the Democrat Party and Democrat policies. So we've already established that this idea of you don't know what's going to be like with Trump, I personally think it's naive. Again, a couple of months from now, if I'm proven wrong, I will get on camera and admit it, eat crow, and happily do so, because that means less people suffered, less people died. But we're getting back into the video. I want you to see a few things about how Democrats decided to talk at us, not even to us or with us, and an effort ostensibly to earn our vote.
See, Mehdi Hasan is from a dying breed, I would say, of Democrat loyalists. I do believe that the Democrat loyalty is dying amongst Muslims. Like, you're getting laughed at. If you're one of these people, you will get laughed at.
But because you're calling upon Muslims to vote for a third party, you are effectively supporting Trump. How would you respond to that?
That's not true. Like, you support Trump by supporting Trump. If we make the election a referendum on Gaza, we win. That is the most important thing as far as discourse goes, that Harris has to lose, and it has to be because of Gaza.
I remain hopeful that the Democrats will lose, and I agree with you that Mehdi Hasan's position is not one that I personally find very honorable, to be honest with you, and it's very hard to justify continued support for the Democrats because the genocide is on their hands ultimately.
You trust Donald Trump, and I don't think you can trust a word the man says, and I think he's conning you.
It's not only me, Mehdi. It's not only me. It's also 80 million Americans that trust him.
Yeah, and they've all been conned, sadly, and I hope you're not going to be the next victim of his con.
80 million, you're saying you're judging the judgment of 80 million Americans?
I am 110% judging those people, yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he conned them. I think he conned them. He lied to them. He said he would give them a
hope you
healthcare
do not
plan,
think-
and he didn't. He said he would build a wall and Mexico would pay for it. He didn't. He said he would save coal mines. He didn't. He did a lot of things. He lied. He's a liar, Imam. But if you trust him, good luck to you.
I agree with the facts and the points that Mehdi's making. The one thing that's just kind of, I have to get it off my chest, the smugness and the talking down to people is exactly why people are angry with Democrats.
You know, should we be voting Trump? I say that I think that Trump's going to win anyway. I think that Harris is going to lose and lose badly.
I can't emphasize enough how much of a hot take that was, because almost everyone was saying, oh, it's so close. Nobody really knows how it's going to happen. Major props to Imam Tom for getting that right.
The situation in America just looks awful for Muslims. I actually don't envy American Muslims having to vote in this.
But the Palestinian people's right to self-determination, their right to justice, must also be recognized. And put yourself in their shoes. Look at the world through their eyes. It is not fair that a Palestinian child cannot grow up in a state of their own. Their entire lives with the presence of a foreign army that controls the movements, not just of those young people, but their parents, their grandparents, every single day. It's not just when settler violence against Palestinians goes unpunished. It's not right to prevent Palestinians from farming their lands or restricting a student's ability to move around the West Bank or displace Palestinian families from their homes. Neither occupation nor expulsion is the answer. Palestinians have a right to be a free people in their own land.
Okay. I showed that clip because that was at the end of President Obama's second term, and quite a while ago. And there's two important takeaways that we should take from that. First and foremost, the takeaway is that history didn't start a little over a year ago, and that everyone who's trying to act like this is just some people just hate another people for no reason. And I want to be clear. My religion, my faith as a Muslim, teaches rules of a just war. You're not allowed to kill the innocent. You're not allowed to destroy infrastructure. You know, I fully, as a Muslim, and because of my faith, condemn things that happened. Massacre, the taking of civilians, all of that stuff should never have happened. But that has, as Bernie is about to say, doesn't give Israel the right to commit genocide. That part is just crystal clear. The thing here, though, is I wanted to show a contrast between how Democrats used to speak to how they are. And we're starting off with the best of, I know Bernie's technically an independent, but at this point, he just works for the Democrats.
I understand that there are millions of Americans who disagree with President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris on the terrible war in Gaza. I am one of them. And some of you are saying, how can I vote for Kamala Harris if she is supporting this terrible war? And that is a very fair question. And let me give you my best answer.
You know, you don't need to tell us it's a fair question. We're going to question it whether you like it or not. And sorry, spoiler alert, and I cut it out just because I'm sick of hearing it. His best answer is Trump is the big bad boogeyman who's going to be worse.
Real strength's about working hard. Real strength's about taking responsibility. Real strength is about telling the truth even when it's inconvenient. Real strength is about being confident enough to treat everybody with dignity and respect. Real strength is about helping people who need it and standing up for those who can't always stand up for themselves.
Okay. Where's our real strength then? Who are the people that need it? Are we going to help them? Who are the people who can't stand up for themselves? I mean, damn it. If anyone fits those words, It's the people in Gaza. It's the mothers and children with no food that's been let in for God knows how long at this point, being bombed in their tents. Images of people on IVs being burned alive because they couldn't get out in time. Even worse, images of parents carrying their children, and then you look at the child and you're disgusted because you see their brains hanging out of a crack in their skull because of a bomb. You, the fact that parents there literally took the practice of, and this is so disgusting and terrible, writing the names of their children on all four of their limbs in case they have to collect body parts to bury them. I mean, my God, is there a time when someone needs to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves? But y'all, this Democrat messaging to the Muslim community, it gets worse.
Let me talk about the hardest issue here in Michigan is the Middle East. And I understand why young Palestinian and Arab Americans in Michigan are.
Do you see what he just did there? Don't let that go over your head. Young Palestinian and Arab in Michigan, as if this is some niche issue that only affects those demographics in Michigan and not the whole world. Not that the whole world has been mobilizing and speaking out and protesting about this. It's disgusting what he said, but this is one of the hardest clips to watch, but it keeps getting worse.
Think too many people have died.
See what he did there? Think. So first off, it's not all y'all. It's young Palestinian and Arab people in Michigan who think. It's not that too many people have died. It's just those people think too many people have died. Well, Bill, what do you think? You know, the number is quite telling that the death toll number hasn't moved up for 8 months, maybe more. It's stuck at 40,000 people, 40,000 women and children. Even back then, that was too much. You don't think so, Bill? You don't think so? But unbelievably, this clip gets even worse.
But when I read that people in Michigan are thinking about not voting because they're mad at the Biden administration for honoring his historic obligation to try to keep Israel from being destroyed, I think.
To try to keep Israel from being destroyed. Yeah, the attacks on the 7th were horrific. They also didn't fall out of a coconut tree to take a Kamala Harris statement. That's why I played the clip of President Obama at the end of his term. The thing here is there are people being destroyed. The whole area of Gaza is a parking lot now. And then the Israeli officials said openly on the news, we're going to turn Beirut into Gaza. And they're doing it. So who's being destroyed, Bill? Unbelievably, even all of that, it still gets worse.
That's a mistake. I said, do you think I care about the Palestinian children? And he said, oh, much more than the Arabs do.
So this is Bill Clinton in Michigan trying to shore up support for Harris. Well, at least that's what the cover was. Almost feels like he was trying to make sure no Arab or Muslim would support Harris. And he literally said, while he's telling his old stories about him working on the peace process with Yasser Arafat, and repeatedly in that clip, if you go back and watch it, talks about how much Arafat lied to him about accepting the deal, when even Israeli historians and analysts looked at it and said they shouldn't have accepted the deal. He says at the end of this, I, Bill Clinton, care more about Arab children than Arabs do. Come on, man. You want us to vote for you after that? Get out of town.
Speaking the truth means you must speak up and you must speak out, even when you're not being asked.
He intends to cut Social Security and Medicare. He intends to surrender our fight against the climate crisis, and he intends to end the Affordable Care Act. You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking.
I'm sorry, y'all, but I hope you saw the text on the bottom left of the screen. Protesters were bringing up Gaza, and she decided now's the time. I'm going to have my Yas Queen moment and say, I'm speaking. The thing is, she didn't learn from it. And look at the contempt on her face. Look at how she just feels entitled to our vote. Her whole point was, you want Donald Trump? Otherwise, shut up. But you know what? It gets worse.
And sometimes, to make change, you've got to change how change is made. So do not be constrained by tradition. Do not listen when they say it can't be done. President Biden and I have been working every day to bring this conflict. I'm speaking right now, and I value and respect your voice, but I'm speaking right now. We have been working every day to bring this conflict to an end in a way that ensures Israel is secure.
See that? I respect your voice so much so, we're going to push you out of the auditorium and not listen. And then she goes from a protester trying to stop a genocide straight into talking about Israeli security. When Israel is the aggressor in the region, what do they say, a seven-front war? None of those seven fronts started until a genocide started happening in Gaza. So the problem here is that Kamala Harris's words, on the one hand, have nothing to do with her reality on the other, and they expect us not to notice. I'm sorry if y'all just woke up after the election and couldn't understand why Muslims didn't vote for her. That's on you, but you haven't been paying attention.
Can they come in? They were already.
Why not? It is, because why isn't it? We have an invitation. We didn't do anything wrong. We literally have an invite. We have a wristband. We showed our ID.
So what's going on here? The lady said that the two Muslim sisters who wanted to attend, and this is during the Biden-Harris campaign before Biden dropped out. So I want you to know this pathology of mistreating and taking Muslims for granted and just basically saying, we don't need you. It goes way back because this isn't a campaign event where Vice President Harris was going to speak, and they got so concerned about the optics of having protests to the genocide happen that these two Muslim women who were invited, received an email, did everything right, were just visually seen to be wearing a headscarf and were disinvited.
But it's clear, like, what's the other reason why we're disinvited? We have a scarf on our head. And you won't give us a reason, so what's the reason?
If you're disinvited, you're disinvited, right? That's
For what? We deserve an explanation why. We come here, I mean, I can't speak for you, but I come here to see Kamala, as a voter, and this is disgusting. This completely changes my view on things.
If we had an explanation, we'd give it to you, but at this time...
Right, so you don't have an explanation, so therefore it is racist and Islamophobic. And this is exactly what this campaign is gonna, the message that you're trying to spread?
Exactly. It is the message they're trying to spread. So when you guys ask, why did Muslims support Kamala Harris? It's because of that, and because we don't have short memories, and we're fed up of being taken for granted. Other demographics might do it, but not us.
In the West, generally, because we live in comfort, relatively speaking, but Muslims in America who live in maybe extreme comfort, are Muslims in America ready to bear that pain? Are they ready to vote for their Palestinian brothers and sisters?
Now, real quick before we finish this clip, I just need to point something out. As you probably noticed, when it's been Muslim motivational speakers, pundits and faith leaders, there's been a disproportionate amount of British accents. A couple things about that. First and foremost, some of these folks make some critical mistakes in how they're doing analysis, especially before the election. And we'll get into that as the clips roll out. But secondly, none of these people really have to kind of contend with the Trump presidency because they don't live here. They're not citizens. I mean, of course, foreign policy wise, but they're making the case themselves that there's very little difference between Democrat and Republican foreign policy. I mean, they're absolutely right about that. But the fact that Americans are taking or maybe not, we're going to look into that in the future episode, but at least the hot topics that before the election and some of the most viewed clips that I tried to pull here involve people who aren't in America, who aren't directly affected, but have a lot to say about our electoral system.
I think that it's less about whether they're willing to bear the pain and more a lack of belief in their power.
more an incredulous disbelief that they actually have power.
The one thing I did feel that I had a strong opinion about is that loyalty, after you've seen what your party has done, it just seems to be the dumbest approach to politics. Now, we're just going to stick with you regardless, because what it does is disallows you to ever sway these people. You'll never walk away. In any negotiation, the one who has some degree of power is the one who's willing to walk away from the table.
Don't take the Imam's word for it. I want you to take a look at this clip because it's really important and makes the same point from a totally different vantage.
If you want to pull the party, the major party that is closest to the way you're thinking, to what you're thinking, you must show them that you're capable of not voting for them. I worked within the Democratic Party. I didn't listen or have to listen to anything on the left while I was working in the Democratic Party because the left had nowhere to go.
Exactly.
Because the elections are at such a knife edge, because it's so close, it means that the minority population, the Muslims in those areas, who just so happen to be concentrated in these swing states, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Georgia, in Arizona, many of them in Florida as well, although Florida in recent years has not been the swing state that it once was. But as a result of the tightness of the elections, these votes certainly have an outsized impact in terms of deciding who wins in those particular states. In normal times, perhaps, the Muslims would not have this influence. But it's precisely because it's so tight that the election could be decided by about 10, 20, 30,000 votes in areas with at least 100,000 Muslims.
Now, there's a lot to say here, but if you think back just a few seconds ago, Brother Sami, and may Allah reward him, almost as kind of singly or Herculeanly responsible for getting so many people to post, to draw awareness to, and to, like have some major rifts in public opinion, almost kind of pushing the Overton window amongst the West on the genocide that's happening. I think he can't be praised enough and really needs to be recognized, and we all need to make dua for him, make prayers for him for that effort. But earlier he stated that American Muslims, don't even recognize or have this understanding that they have political power. If you listen to him right now, he literally just said in normal times we don't. And then he talked about example of the different swing states where it kind of only comes to two right now where Muslims might be having an ability to swing the vote. Obviously, the landslide victory where Trump not only won the Electoral College in all the swing states, but also won the popular vote, really puts a kibosh on that and just obviously makes it where the American Muslim community couldn't have and didn't cost Kamala Harris the election. But the thing here, there's even a miscalculation before the vote, before we knew it would happen, because he cites Florida and he talks about how Florida is not the swing state it used to be. And it just takes a moment of common sense to reflect that even with the primaries to get Biden to be the nominee in the last election cycle, they moved the order of the primary states in order to benefit the nominee that they wanted. There is basically nothing that the National Democratic Party won't do to rig the system in order to get the outcomes that they want. So do you think 4 years from now that Michigan and the Arab Muslim community, that they're just going to let that be a wild card that could be that powerful for them? He says in normal times that, this wouldn't be the case. And we can't build a whole strategy based on what could have been this time. It's very dangerous. But we got to get back into the video because there's more ground to cover. Let's go.
The pro-Harris campaign is a total lose.
Yep.
The abandon Harris, abandon Biden, abandon Harris campaign is principled for sure, and it's likely to not have any great political impact.
Exactly.
Even the Democrats are bound by the Israeli money, Israeli AIPAC money. I think they're just going to have to bite the bullet and say, all right, we lost the Muslims, that's it. They can't go without the money. They can't offend the AIPAC too much.
Yeah, this is so important. If you think for a second, regardless of ad buys and last minute campaign stops, if you don't think that the campaign managers from the DNC didn't do a deep dive into the demographic numbers, looking at likely voters, looking at voter history, uh, and then kind of made a cost benefit analysis on if they should change their rhetoric towards the Muslim community, if they should court our vote in a serious way. You're crazy because they wanted to win. I think when people are trying to talk about these conspiracy theories like the Clintons were sabotaging Harris or all this stuff, the reality is Kamala Harris had an uphill battle the whole time. She had terrible advice. She courted the right instead of the people that were excited when she first was appointed, not democratically selected, but appointed to be the nominee. And all of that comes together for a point that I'm about to make that is crucial. But we need to see a little bit more of the dialogue that was happening from our community to understand what people right now are advocating for us to do to be politically empowered. And I think there's a huge red flag in what people are asking us to do right now.
And here is the point, Jalal, in that what is at risk in November is not the future of Gaza or Palestine or the like. What's at risk is the future of Zionism.
How is it that you're saying that if Harris loses, Zionism loses, when Donald Trump is a Zionist anyway?
I think that it's easier to answer this question if you put yourself in the position of the Zionist, and we'll go through the argument. Both presidents are going to be pro-Israel, pro-Zionist, and that's the argument that tends to lead many Muslims to say there's no point. But the question, therefore, is why do the Israelis believe that they have to spend unprecedented amounts of money in this election? If the outcome is that both are pro-Israel, what is the threat that is making the Israelis spend 24 million unprecedented amounts of money on a primary race to unseat Jamal Bowman? What is making the Israelis, AIPAC, what is making the Zionist lobby spend so much money to topple Cory Bush?
You see what he did there? He sets up talking about the presidential election and how if somehow the Muslim community had it within its power to cost Kamala the election because of her support for genocide. He's labeling her support for Zionism. And then he says, what is making the Israeli lobby spend all this money on congressional primaries that had already been concluded? See, it's a bait and switch. They don't logically follow one another. By the time we were voting on November 5th, Cory Bush and Jamal Baldwin had already lost their primaries and were not on the ballot. So the idea here is what's making the pro-Israeli lobby get rid of those people isn't the presidential election and the outcome there. This is so crucial that you understand that. It's that they're weeding out of the U.S. House and Senate any voices that they can that are critical of their plans and their moving forward. That's just smart politics. This isn't some kind of huge fear that Kamala will lose because of opposition to the genocide. This is controlling, to the extent possible, the ability to have allies and people who are in power who will raise objections. That's what this is about.
The next period of maybe a decade, and I think forever, Muslims will always have divergent opinions on this because, A, we're so large in number, right? We're so vast in number. There's no set theology to this, right? There's no set Shari'i law on this subject. And I think our strength will be in being able to have divergent opinions. And what that will disallow, I think it'll disallow the Muslims to ever be a single block that is, swings elections, right? Maybe in a pocket, right? Like a state, like they say Florida in 2001, maybe Michigan in 2024, maybe. But it does also cause Muslims to always be relevant.
That is so important. Building an entire political strategy based on what you think your enemy's fear is and then getting it wrong is very foolhardily. But because Muslims woke up, because we voted, because that was the dominant conversation, there's an energy in the community that represents a real historic opportunity that if we fail to capitalize on, or even worse, we get it wrong and build a strategy based on kind of wishful thinking and kind of like dream casting into existence realities that aren't there, or pretending we have power that we don't. Um, that's full-heartedly, and it will turn this historic opportunity into a historic failure. Um, to make that point even more abundantly clear, we're going to finish off with a couple more clips.
What is making AIPAC spend unprecedented levels of money on an election that is expected to produce an outcome that is supposed to be pro-Israel? What is the threat that they see in November that Muslims are failing to see?
Great question. And you know what the threat is? It's not that they're going to win no matter who wins the presidential election. The threat is, and this will put into some context, uh, maybe the messaging and the strategy and what was done to our community in the campaign. The threat is that they understand Muslims are mobilizing. Muslims are concerned. We're using whatever political power we have. We're probably having conversations about becoming major donors to political campaigns. And if you can disillusion and disenfranchise Muslims, get them to give up on the two-party system that actually has the power. Now, remember, I voted third party, and traditionally my whole life I've been a political independent. I've never affiliated with either party, and normally I vote libertarian at the POTUS, but I always vote for people who have the power based on my best intentions on what could be the best outcome down ballot. The issue here is that if you can get a mass exodus of Muslims from the Democratic Party, and you can kind of count on Muslims being active in the Republican Party as being a weak minority, then you've disempowered the Muslim community, and you can squash the opposition before it even has a chance to thrive. That's the threat. That's why they did what they did.
There's a disconnect and there's a fissure between the sort of immigrant Muslim community and the Warithabin Muhammad community and the African American community at large. However, this was exploited.
Exactly. So, us infighting, putting each other down, going after one another for how we voted, we have to stop with that line of thinking and pick up a yes and. An idea that no matter if we disagree on political strategy, we have to think the best of our brothers and sisters. Now, people who are proven to be shills for one party or the other, who are on the payroll of a party, who are trying to represent the Muslim community and then literally employed by groups that don't have our best interests, call those people out, crucify them. Well, not literally, but, figuratively, and destroy their influence because, yeah, the ROI and having those people lead our community, not good at all. But this constant infighting and basically declaring war on one another because of a political disagreement is very akin to those liberals going after us, saying that they hope the full wrath of a potential, Trump policy hits us. That's not a brotherly or sisterly way to act, and it's a way to continue to push people out of politics and then kind of forgive that threat that Brother Sami was asking about.
If we're going to be honest, and people really hate this line, the best predictor for future behavior is past behavior.
And that's why it's so important here that we get right back into the idea of the historic opportunity. We cannot allow for our community to remain marginalized. So in future episodes of this show, we're going to talk about the stats to the event, to the ability and through the research possible of how Muslims actually did vote, and break that down and kind of put a nail in the coffin of these different arguments on how powerful our community is and then how we can actually build power. Again, I totally agree with commentators about either revising or rejecting grass turf type of organizations, people that don't really represent our community. At the same time, I'm not going to be for destroying useful infrastructure and pushing out people who do have the benefit of our community at their heart, or at least even the ability. We have to start thinking about this not as a checkers game, but as a chess game, and start thinking, even if these people, we don't agree with their motivations, what's the outcome that's predictable? We're not in this for quid pro quo. We're in this for what is the best return? What are our values? What do we want to see? Alliances can be temporary, they don't have to be permanent. And alliances can happen between people for where they agree and only on that issue. That's the historic opportunity that our community really misses very often because in the past we were all asleep. We rarely vote in the midterms. We rarely vote at the city and state levels. We rarely have people running for office. And I think this election cycle has energized the Muslim community. I think that it's going to make people start to do those things. And I am all here for it. And I'm going to support every good person from our community that is working to empower us. And more importantly, that is working to preserve the American civil liberties, to preserve the Bill of Rights, to be constitutional in how we are as citizens. Um, Again, it's so important that American Muslims really get this point home. And I want to close with this because we are a First Amendment community. This is especially true for me because I'm a member of the Muslim community by choice. I converted to Islam. I embraced Islam over 20 years ago. My whole life has been dedicated to service. Um, and I want to see us get this right because if we continue down the path that we're going to be infighting and ineffective. We're going to be dividing and bitter amongst each other. And then we won't be able to do what the Imam said by always being relevant no matter who's in charge. And then, as other people are advocating, this false idea of how much power we have, we won't be a stick to sway elections. It's just something that won't happen. Um, so I want to encourage all of you to please comment on this video, share the video with other people. Let me know what I got wrong. Let me know what you want to see me cover in the future. This channel is going to be dedicated to exploring three things. First and foremost, civil liberties. Second, issues of identity. And then third, civics. And we're going to do it with nuance. We're going to do it deeper than most people do. And we're going to build a community together that's going to help us empower one another. Thank you so much for your time today. God bless you all. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.